Here's the thing about mindset. There are so many great words and affirmations and catchphrases and things that we can initially latch onto that give us a little bit of traction that can eventually turn into momentum and can change your life. It can put you on a path to improving your life. And that's what I was doing. I was latching on to these words that I had heard my father say my entire life. He picked it up from his time in the Army. Like I said, he was in the military as well. His first unit, every unit you're in the Army, at least, you get like a phrase, a creed, a saying. His first unit, the 116th Infantry Regiment, was Ever Forward. He picked it up there. He brought it home. Literally, my earliest memories are Ever Forward, seeing it on his uniform.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bobbbaaaay. Each week with our guest episodes, I try to put the spotlight on someone who in my eyes is tapping into their inner potential. Today's guest was born and raised in Roanoke, Virginia. After serving 6 years of active duty for the Army, he was medically discharged due to a string of injuries that injured him and made him relearn how to walk twice. He's the host of Ever Forward podcast, devoted to help you build a life that propels you forward through the conversations with leaders in health, wellness, fitness, personal development, and more. He's the founder of Ever Forward Coaching, helping people address obstacles that keep them from reaching their goals. He's also the founder of Operation Podcast, the ultimate resource to successfully launch, grow, and monetize your podcast. Today on the podcast, fellow bearded brother, Chewning, baby. How we doing?
I'm good, man. That's a hell of an intro, and I'm in growing season for mine. We
got to bring it out.
You got me beat right now. That's for sure.
We got to bring it out. Come on, let it grow. Let it grow. I mean, hell of an intro, man. You've had hell of a story so far, and it's very clear to me you're still like that mindset of just getting started, bigger, better. The direction obviously is ever forward, but the journey that you've taken to where you are today, and we even just touched on it real quickly before, is like there have been a lot of seasons to your story to get you to where you are today. And I think that is such a great example of somebody that's just recreated a new identity every time the new season comes. And I think sometimes we hold back, we resist change because we're scared to take that step forward to recreate the identity. And I think you are literally an example of somebody that has had to hit the refresh button a couple times, but have made stride forward. And I'm really excited about this conversation today, man.
I appreciate that for sure. And it's interesting. It's kind of like an out of body experience. Anytime you have somebody read your bio or talk about you or kind of just like, wow, shit, is that me? It's wild. I just woke up today and trying to just make it, but yeah, shit, when you say it out loud like that, I guess it is a lot.
You've done a lot. I think it's human nature to be guilty of that, where it's like we are where we are today in present moment, but it's not until you stop and you actually look behind you go like, wow, this has been a really interesting ride. Some highs, some lows, some probably moments of like questioning, am I going the right path? But it's like human nature to just look forward, to constantly be marching forward, to wake up today, worry about what's on the plate today. But I think it's equally as important to once in a while take that moment to look behind, because I think that in of itself just re-inspires us and just adds more fuel to the fire. Like, if I've made it this far and I've overcome X, Y, and Z, no mountain is high enough for me moving forward. So I think it's really important just to once in a while take that second to look back,
That's it. That's the mindset over here as well. And it doesn't start that way. It just, you learn to develop that, or you have to choose to develop that. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. So I think a really important, there's a lot of important moments, so don't take this wrongly. There's a lot of things we're going to touch on today, but I think one important reason you are where you are today seems to stem back to this injury that you had while you were enlisted. And to me, it seemed like it sparked this focus and this interest on health and personal development. How did you have the confidence after going through an injury like that to say, maybe I should be focusing on health or personal development? Like, what was the spark within you to say, the Army isn't the path right now, this might be the next step?
Well, Uncle Sam kind of made that decision for me. So I was like 23, about to turn 24. And my initial life plan just took a hard left turn. In fact, it was completely yanked out from underneath me.
You were ready to go all in 20 years, right?
Yeah,
For the Army?
Yeah. I enlisted.
Because 20 years and you can retire, right?
Retire. It was easy. And for me, that would have been 37. So I enlisted right after high school, man. I was 17 actually still. So I was like, shit, 20 years, I'll be 37. That's still pretty young, very young. And I can retire. I'll have pension, benefits, all these things. Hopefully I've gone to school by then and I can move on to the next season of my life. Next career or whatever. Or hell, maybe I can just chill for a little bit. But then at 24, all that changed. I like to kind of joke and say I overachieved. The nature of my injuries, I actually rated high enough to be medically retired. And so I just tell everybody I overachieved and I retired at 24 instead of 37.
Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Yeah, but it wasn't my choice. It wasn't my choice. And so when the Army told me, hey, the nature of your injuries are so severe and we rehabilitated you to this point, you're like walking again and like you're physically capable to kind of take care of yourself again, but you're no longer capable of being a soldier. And so it was a big, just not only life plan change but identity change. I mean, I'm sure anybody listening that's been in the military or military family, you can really relate to, like, that's not just your job, that is who you are. That is what you do, who you are day in, day out, because quite literally, we're never off the clock. There's always this imminent threat kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And so that changed all for me. And I realized that, I don't know if it was, hey, I'm going to stick it to the man, or it was just my own kind of personal choice. Honestly, so much of that period of my life is still a little bit of a blur. I just knew that if I rested, odds of me getting back into something, odds of me really putting my life back onto a path was going to be pretty low. And that was just because of what I saw happening to a lot of other guys and girls, men and women exiting the military, especially through the way that I did, suffering injuries, getting medically discharged, medically retired. It just unfortunately, wasn't a good path. There's a lot of mental health problems, a lot of despair, a lot of suicide, a lot of just things that I didn't want to happen to me. And then I it's almost like I saw a little bit of foresight. I saw like, if I allow the opportunity, if I allow enough time to just wedge its way in between me and my life, I can kind of see where this is going to go. And so I left the Army, and quite literally, I think 3 weeks later, I was enrolled in school full-time, undergrad, studying exercise science. Because it was just like my way of continuing my own rehabilitation and understanding the human body, because I wasn't really where I wanted to be physically. I mean, hell, honestly, when I went to school for the first time to like enroll for classes and look at everything, I was still on a cane. I had to have my mom come with me and help escort me around school. And I'm like this 23, 24-year-old kid. And I was just like, what the hell am I going to do? I wasn't going to accept the fact that doctors told me, hey, this is probably as good as it's going to get. This is, you've reached your quota here, air quotes, on physical therapy, rehab. That's it. I just wasn't ready to accept that yet. So I kind of just decided two things. Like I said earlier, I didn't want to go down the path and just allow time and just what I saw happening for a lot of other soldiers happen. And I just wasn't going to accept that the cards I were dealt, like, that's it, especially not at 24. And so, that was my catalyst, man. You hit the nail on the head. That was my catalyst to I chose, I'm going to study the human body inside and out and just master this bitch.
Wow. Yeah. Especially when you're like, at that age, you're betting on this is like going to be your identity for the next 20 years of like, you're not ready for that pivot. And it's also interesting I don't know if they've ever considered changing this. I feel like, because you were intelligence, you were studying
military intelligence. I was actually a Russian linguist. Yeah.
Yeah. So it almost, now I don't know anything of what that job entails. I don't know if that's something that you would normally do just on the home front, or if you have to go overseas, but you would almost imagine, like, are there certain military rules that somebody could still do, even if there is technical medical issues? Once again, I have no idea what that job looked like. Maybe you were out in Russia, moving around. I don't know.
I can tell you more, but then I'd have to kill you.
We'll save that for the after. We'll save that for the non-public podcast.
I'll paint a picture for you real quick, actually. And I'm not saying, I'm neither confirming nor denying this is all or part of what I did. But here's a good example of what you could experience in the job that I had, the MOS that I had. Did you ever watch the Amazon show Jack Ryan?
Yes.
With John Krasinski?
Yes.
It's kind of like that.
Okay.
Right. But
So
for
you're
me,
John Krasinski.
I wish. The dude's a badass, but amazing show. But imagine that, but just Russia instead.
Wow.
Russian studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense. If you got medically discharged, it had to happen. You got to be ready to go at any moment in time at that point.
And you have to. And that's the nature of the game. In the military, no matter what job you choose, at the end of the day, like for me, I joined the Army, right? So no matter what job I chose, I chose and I went through school and training for intelligence work, for Russian studies. I didn't speak a lick of Russian going in. They taught me in their language academy in Monterey, California. So you do your job, and that's what you do day in, day out. But on top of that, you are always a soldier, meaning you have to always stay on top of what we call your warrior tasks and drills. It's just you have to be able to fight, you have to be able to maneuver, you have to be able to, get out into the field, you have to be able to specialize in certain weapons, because at any given moment, like your skill set is your skill set in that job, that MOS. But if you're needed as a soldier, well, those skill sets need to stay finely tuned as well. So not only was I working on my craft as an intelligence specialist, as a Russian linguist, but so many days of the month and week and months out of the year, we were just doing tactical training, because this was all during OIF era, 2003 to 2009. We were a country at war.
Oh, wow.
So there was, like I said earlier, this imminent threat, this imminent danger. I mean, I knew people that were, to the left and right of me working on, intelligence work one day, but then, the next week they're overseas in Afghanistan, because we can apply our skill set as an intelligence operative outside of the language skill set. And so that was a huge part of it as well, was yes, here's my job. Yes, here's my identity, but also quite literally imminent death possibility, or just, the need to be called up, which we all knew was there. I mean, I knew it was there when I enlisted. And actually, kind of to go back a little bit further into the origin of my injuries, that's actually kind of why it all happened. I'll take another step back here. I was in a really, really dark spot at that time in my life. I had just lost my father. I buried him at age 19.
How old were you at that time?
I was 19 when he died. I was in the Army about a year and a half at that point. And I spent another almost 2 years doing my job in the Army, going through all that, suppressing a lot of that grief and trauma. And just, my father was my hero. He was a big reason why I joined the Army. He was in the Army. My uncle was in the Marines. My grandfather was a World War II Army vet, and just so on and so forth. And so that meant a lot to me. And I was trying to follow along in his footsteps, and this whole aspect of honor and legacy, and just I saw the pride that it gave him, and that was more meaningful to me at that time than trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life. It's like, I can do this. I'll retire at 37, and everything we just shared earlier. But I did such a poor job of allowing myself to feel and process his death and what that really meant, because I was a kid. I was a young guy that just left home. And on top of that, I was a soldier in the United States Army during the height of wartime. And I kind of just gave up. And long story short, I realized, hey, if I just volunteer for deployments, if I volunteer for these things, that is going to probably increase my chances of not coming home alive. And so I volunteered my services. First one fell through. It was a 6-month deployment, fell through because I wasn't the right rank yet. So I was like, okay, cool, duly noted. So let me get back to work on getting promoted. So I worked my ass off. I got promoted. Military people, I got promoted to E6 in less than 5 years, and that's very, very hard to do. And as I was working my way up the ranks, again, I was trying to get promoted because I wanted to be deployed, because living was so much of a difficulty for me at that time. I was just so grief-stricken and honestly depressed. I wanted to deploy. I wanted to stop doing what I was doing day in, day out. And I wanted to go be a soldier over there. And I wanted to be the one kicking down doors. I wanted to just put myself in harm's way or as close as possible, in hopes that maybe, I would come home in a box wrapped in a flag, and then my family would get this massive life insurance payout. And the training that happened when I suffered those injuries was a field training exercise that would have been a step in the path to getting me to that deployment, to another one. And God, the universe, my dad, whatever you want to call it, it was just not in the cards. And I was like day 3, I think 3, maybe 4, not long to this war game training. And I was leading this ambush of my squad against the fake enemy. We call it the Op4, the opposing force. And it was like this convoy coming down this lane of, foot soldiers and, vehicles. And honestly, the next thing I know, that I'm like blacking out. I'm down on the ground. I got the medic over top of me. They're pulling me out. I was leading this ambush, and like the heat of it all, I honestly don't know what happened. I thought I got shot. I heard and felt this pop on my backside. What happens was I tore my hamstring, and I like went the wrong way with my L4 and L5 in my back. And so as fast as I was popping up leading this ambush, I was down on the ground thinking that I got shot. And that was it. That was the injury that did it. And so that trauma right then and there, and then my need to want to get back onto that deployment roster and get back into regular duty superseded my rehab. And I wound up re-injuring myself, and it was just a mess. And it got to be so bad that like I couldn't walk. And then I wound up having to have both of my femurs completely reconstructed. The damage done at that initial injury, on top of my inability to follow through with proper rehab, just made things so much worse for my back and my hips that I wound up having to have both of my femurs completely reconstructed, removed from my body, reshaped, reconstructed, put back in, and then 2 rods put back into my hips.
My God.
And that was so severe that like, not, hey, you, like, to your point, you can't be deployed obviously right now. You can't even do your job. So we're going to yank you out of this unit, yank you out of your known world, transplanted me into this other medical hold unit on a different base. And my only job for almost the last like year and a half, almost 2 years I was in, was just to be a patient. I would go in, they would cut me open. I was in the hospital for a while. I would be bedridden for a while. Then when they could get me into rehab, and I would, learn how to walk again and rehabilitate myself up to a point to where I could load bear fully, they would go back and do the other side. It was one hip at a time. So I realized that was kind of a long-winded way just to kind of describe like that injury and where my body was and what happened, but more importantly, where my mind was. Yeah. Because as big of a catalyst as it was for me to learn the human body and to put myself on the path I am now, that is the ultimate catalyst for honestly everything else that I'm doing, because my mindset and my mental health was so far from where it is now. Like that also was broken at the same time. And it just wasn't in the cards for me. No matter how hard I tried to put myself in harm's way or change life's purpose for me, life's path for me, it wasn't in the cards. And so I literally had to physically be broken in order to be put back on this path now.
Yeah. I mean, going off of that, the mindset you're going through that process, the one thing that I'm hearing, especially if you're bedridden and you think you're about to be back on your 2 feet and then the injury happens again. The thing that I'm hearing is like an opportunity to literally sharpen your mind. And that's something that I've gotten from like running long distances. Like I don't do it because I love running long distance. I do it because it's me forcing myself to sharpen my mind 1 mile at a time. And I know the entire ever forward really stems back to your father and something that he had, I think, kind of pushed onto you. So how is his death, this experience, being the vehicle for you to like lean into this ever forward mindset? And that is like the definition of you for even where you are today. I don't know how many years ago that was, 10 years ago, but it's so much you now.
I've been out of the Army now for 11 years. Wow. He passed away in 2005. So coming up on 17 years. And here's the thing about mindset. There are so many great words and affirmations and catchphrases and things that we can initially latch onto that give us a little bit of traction, that can eventually turn into momentum and can change your life. It can put you on a path to improving your life. And that's what I was doing. I was latching on to these words that I had heard my father say my entire life. He picked it up from his time in the Army. Like I said, he was in the military as well. His first unit, every unit you're in the Army, at least you get like a phrase, a creed, a saying. His first unit, the 116th Infantry Regiment, was ever forward. He picked it up there. He brought it home. Literally, my earliest memories are ever forward, seeing it on his uniform and all this shit. And when he passed, it was just this thing that I was like, okay, well, he left me this cool message. He left me and my family and our community this cool message, this thing to remember him by, other than just him in his memory. And that's what I latched onto at first, because it was the obvious choice. It was, okay, here's what I'm supposed to do. Here's how I'm supposed to, I couldn't do it in the military because I got injured and got out. So now here's another way that I can honor his legacy and keep that going. And latch onto something positive. But what I realized, Bobby, was that latching onto a phrase, a mantra, something positive is very, very different than actually doing the work associated with it. And I say that because on the outside looking in for about 10 years, I was this optimist guy. I was this upbeat guy. And to a varying degree, I mean, it's true. I was and still am, but it was only because I was trying so, so hard to not let anything other than that show, to avoid the pain and the grief and processing that loss of my father and processing the loss of my life's plan and this identity. It all kind of came crumbling down. I'll never forget. I was driving to my job in DC years ago, and the first time this happened, I kind of like blacked out, and I caught myself. I was like in the ditch, swerving off the road, and that began to happen a lot more often. And next thing I knew, I was excusing myself from the movies at home, movie theaters. Anytime anybody would talk about a death, or there would be a death scene in a movie or on the TV, or talking about a terminal illness, I would black out and turn into these panic attacks. And then the biggest one happened when my then girlfriend, now wife, had to like quite literally revive me out of this almost seizure-induced panic attack from watching a movie where it was this death scene where, like, in a hospital bed, this person passed away and they just covered a sheet up over the body. And it took me exactly right back to what happened with my father in the hospital. And I realized at that moment that me choosing I'm choosing to have a good mindset. I'm choosing this positive belief system is not the same thing as me actually enduring it and processing it and like really getting to the root of what it means and doing the work associated to changing your belief system and doing the work associated to improving your mindset. You can put up all the best affirmations and reminders and journal and do all these things, but knowing without doing is the same thing as not knowing. And the body, man, it will wrap you up in a world of hurt as fast as you can ever imagine when you're not doing the work. And I realized that I can't live my life like this. I can't not go to the movies. I can't not have a conversation with somebody because it's talking about death. And so as far and fast and hard as I was running away from the hard things associated to Everforward, I made a choice to run towards it. And I began to run towards just like leaning into those emotions and leaning into that grief and that sorrow and choosing to think about my dad dying and choosing to think about me suffering career-ending injuries and just dwelling on it. And finally, 10 years later at that point, just finally letting my mind and my body process this stuff. And it was only through facing it all that I realized that, yeah, like I can say it, I can talk it, I can whatever, but now I'm actually doing it. And it was in that moment that I realized that I'm finally in a place to really continue his legacy in a way that I'm finally proud of, and then I can wholeheartedly believe in. And that's when Everforward Radio was born. My brother at that time had just about launched Everforward Apparel, and it was the next season, man.
Quick break from today's episode, and then we'll get right back to it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been listening to these podcasts or you follow me on Instagram, you know that I have a lot of energy. And to have this much energy, there are a lot of different decisions that I make in my day and my week that allow me to operate at this level. But I will say one thing that has been extremely important since the top of the new year to increase my energy and to keep it sustained throughout the day is incorporating Tenzo Tea into my day, every single day. Twice a day, I have Tenzo. And what is Tenzo? It is matcha. Matcha is nectar from the gods. Let me tell you right now, I have this twice a day. It keeps me fueled up throughout the day. I love coffee, but I also feel like with coffee, it comes this instant high, followed by this immediate crash. And I've found that Tenzo is actually the one thing that allows me to feel sustained throughout the day. Life can be overwhelming, tough times. We need to be proactive to keep our heads in the right space by fueling our bodies with energy that serves our highest potential, okay? 64% of American adults drink coffee every day and pay the price with dehydration, jitters, anxiety, headaches, the things that none of us want. Switch out the morning coffee for matcha, and it helps you stay level-headed, focused, and avoid that coffee crash, which I was just talking about. Tenzo matcha contains natural caffeine and L-theanine that keeps you energized and more focused like a Zen monk. Who does not want to be a Zen monk? I want to be a Zen monk. This product tastes great with just water, and it also makes a delicious matcha latte. I personally love the latte. I mix in some almond milk, and my God, it is so good. Tenzo keeps you alert and focused for longer so that you can be more productive with your day. 36 milligrams of caffeine per half teaspoon serving. I like to scoop a couple big scoops in there. I'm probably looking at like 100 milligrams of caffeine, but hey, you choose it, not me. It's natural occurring L-theanine and switches your brain waves to focus meditative state. This stuff is delicious. I drink it daily, and I'm telling you right now, you need to give it a try. Get 25% off your order when you go to tenzotea.co and use my promo code TheBeardedMan. Once again, that is 25% off anything that you ordered at tenzotea.co. You won't regret it. Try it out. Slide through my DMs and let me know if you have more sustained energy, and I guarantee you, you're going to enjoy it. Back to today's episode. So when you say you finally, because I hear you, there's been times in my life where I'm running away from the problem because I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. I think many people can relate to moments in their lives, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a career they didn't get, and they just are like, all right, I'll just apply for the next one, but they didn't take a moment to reflect and go, well, why didn't I get the career, or what could I have done differently? When you're saying you finally just went ever forward at the issue, what does that look like? Is it just letting it come out of your body through emotions? Is it journaling? Is it therapy? Like, what were some of those first couple things that allowed you to finally start facing it?
Ultimately, yeah, it was everything you just said. It was all the above. But the first thing that I did was I realized that I needed to just get it out. I'll never forget. I was living with my brother at the time. We had just moved up to Northern Virginia from Richmond, Virginia. And I walked out of our apartment up the street, maybe a couple of blocks to the CVS, and I bought this like $4 or $5 Mead notebook, like the marble cover. Everybody knows that one, right?
Yeah.
And I picked up I picked it up and I thought, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I just knew that what I was doing wasn't working anymore. So let me get this. I'm going to journal. I'm going to work it out. Well, I took that back to my apartment and I sat down with it, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just knew that I needed to get stuff out, and I just began to brain dump. Wow. And just brain dump. And just honestly, still to this day, I can recall to that day and then so many more days after that, just having no idea what the hell I was going to write or what I was thinking about, but just sitting there and just allowing it to just come out of me. And Bobby, it just flowed, man. It just flowed, like just anger, happiness, sorrow, grief, trauma, like anything and everything you could ever imagine in the human emotion spectrum just poured out. Wow. And then what I would do, so I would brain dump it out, and then I would kind of review it and read it. And then that gave me kind of tangible next steps. I would be dumbfounded at some of the stuff that I would see. And I was like, oh, wow, like I had no idea I really felt that way, or I had no idea it was this low or that high or whatever. And then that would kind of show me next steps. Mm-hmm. So once I got the brain dump out, I would look at it, review it. I would get the tangible next steps, and it would show me things that, like, okay, I'm going to choose to work on this. Okay, I'm going to really double down on this area or whatever. And then once I kind of got an idea of what I wanted to work on or what was clearly there, then I began to seek out professional help again. I was kind of off and on with therapists and stuff over the years, but I went back intentionally and committed. I went back for several months at a time. I honestly just began to tell people. I kind of let my guard down, and finally, being the older brother, I'm the oldest of three, I began to just open up and talk to my siblings about it. My brother saw it. Like I said, we were living together for a year, and it was very, very different behavior. He would wake up, he'd see me in the island in the kitchen, just journaling and listen to a podcast and reading whatever new self-help book I could find. And he would give me shit for a lot of it. He's like, what do you think you're better than me? What are you doing over there?
That's what your younger brother's supposed to do. He's supposed to give you shit.
Exactly, man. And he did, but in our way. And I got it out of me. I got professional help. I shared it with the people that I trusted and loved most in my life. And then that, honestly, man, just kind of laid the foundation for so much of the work that I do now. I finally just allowed it to get out. And once I allowed it to get out, it showed me the next steps that I needed to take and the ones that I wanted to take. And just that became my new habits, just like, how I choose to eat or what kind of workout I want to do. It just became ingrained in my daily practice for my total well-being.
Yeah, that's just right? That is the first step to incorporating a new habit, to making a change in their life, is being aware enough and being able to be honest with yourself of saying, this isn't right. This needs to change. And whether that is, hey, what's happened has happened. I need to face the reality of this instead of running away. Or it's just, I'm not happy with the physical fitness of how I feel. That first step is the hardest step, which is just acknowledging and admitting whatever it is that you need to admit, is admitting it. And then it's like, what is that first step, and taking that first step. And then that's where the momentum begins, and that's where real change comes. But yeah, I
And
mean,
I'll also say one thing there that I give a lot of credit to. So the personal work is very important, but to anyone listening who maybe this is you, maybe you're the person that is on the other side of it. Like I mentioned, there was this one time where my then girlfriend, now wife, kind of had to like revive me out of this panic attack,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So she helped me then and there, but what she said and did next was really the brutal honesty that I needed, that I didn't want. And she was like, Chase, I love you and I see a future with you. And like, we were already talking about getting married and a lot of that stuff. But she was like, if you're not going to focus on this, if you're not going to work on this, I don't see how like we can work on us. Because it was that bad, man. This wasn't, like I said, the first time. This was just the worst one. And it wasn't because, hey, oh, wow, you have a problem, like you're messed up. It was just, she was seeing what I was not working on. She was seeing what I was not willing to address. And she was like, she loved me so much. She's like, if you're not willing to work on yourself, how can you be willing to work on us, kind of thing.
Wow.
And so I say that because I hope maybe someone listening is that person. Maybe you're recognizing something in a friend or a loved one and you're worried, am I going to cross a boundary? Is this going to cause a problem in our relationship? Like, and it might, it really might. But if you can honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say that it is for my betterment and theirs, that I can honestly give them this feedback because I love them so much, like, please be that person. Because I don't know, without that candor, without her radical honesty, if it would have been enough for me to do it on my own. I don't know.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I have definitely even experienced in my own personal life where I'm nervous to say something to somebody when it's really for the better of them, but I'm scared that they are just going to dismiss me. They're going to be offended by it. And the one thing that I've realized that is the key to any moments like that is the way in which you communicate it. If you come at somebody screaming at them, telling them, things need to change, this, that, the third, well, they're gonna mirror that type of energy back and tell you to F off, and they're not gonna listen to you. But if you come and you approach them in a calm manner and you create that space where it's like, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. Let's not let these emotions run high, but just that ability to call out somebody in the lens that it's for the best of them is a hard thing to do. And I think that's a great call, because there's people that I know right now that I know I should say something, but I'm scared to, because I just don't want them to be offended. And I also am just scared to say that one thing that I want to say, and then they take it personal, and then they just kind of dismiss me.
It's a delicate dance, man. It's a delicate dance, and so individual and so unique to each relationship. And like, only you're going to know how to kind of, approach
Navigate
that person.
it. Yeah, that's good. Talk to me about how you've, especially, so it's like, I think we've gotten up to the place where now we're like, the headspace is clearing. You're like, I'm about to fucking take over the world mindset. How are you staying consistent even when, I know the game of launching a podcast, especially those early days, it ain't easy when nobody's listening and you're trying to prove to the world, like, I'm the next best podcaster. You need to listen to this. Super hard, but you have to hold yourself accountable. So whether it is the podcast, whether it's been coaching, whether it's been all these other entrepreneur stuff that you've been building, how have you held yourself accountable to staying consistent?
Yeah, man, that's a really powerful question. And it's like the answer that nobody really wants to hear, because it's the one you always hear. And it's just consistency.
Yeah.
In anything you want to be successful at, especially podcasting in particular, but a YouTube channel, social media, writing a book, whatever, insert your goal here. If you're not consistent in it, to show up enough for yourself, how can you expect anybody else to?
Bam.
And I'll say, for me, specifically the podcast, I started Everforward Radio as a way to really kind of supplement my then identity, my then profession. I was working a 9 to 5. I was a clinical health coach. I worked in a concierge medical practice. So it was kind of this harmony, this marriage of traditional medical care plus fitness and nutrition kind of stuff. And it was great because that's exactly what I wanted in my own rehab and my personal health and all this stuff. So I was like, great, I get to kind of pay it forward now. I receive so much care from all modalities. I get to now contribute to this. And so I started the show as a way to feed that, because when I studied or discovered podcasts right around all this time of my own personal work, around, it was like 2015-ish. And I would go to a client session. We called them patients. I would show up for my patients that day, and I would immediately have new data, new information, a new resource, just the new to share with them to help our work together, but also to help them, get off medication, to lose 40 pounds, to whatever, to improve the quality of their life. And it just hit me like, well, what if I was the one actually asking these questions? So right then and there was my immediate initial why. It was because this is going to help me help other people. And this was around like summer 2016 when I got the idea, and I began to like record some solo episodes and interview some other people. And then I launched in January of 2017, and I did that all of 2017, one episode a week. It was messy as hell. I honestly, I wouldn't even recommend anybody go back and listen to that first year. Like there's so many wrong ways I was using a microphone. It's a joke.
That's how it works, brother. You got to start somewhere.
You got to keep fucking up. You got to keep fucking up in order to figure out how to fix it. Totally. And I did. But like I said, I initially had that why attached to, I'm doing this so that I can get better at my job and therefore help other people. So there was my first why. Shout out Simon Sinek, start with why. I mean, again, another cliche answer, but it's because it works and it's true. So staying consistent and having a why very early on. And I'll even caveat, and I'll say to A here, was a why for somebody else. It was, I know why I'm doing it, and this is going to help so many other people. Because as a coach, I think anybody listening who is a coach, like if you're a good coach, like you really, really care about other people. And you're constantly seeking ways to get better at your craft, whether that's a conference, a course, a certification, a degree, books, whatever. And I did not find any other way to get better at my job as a as a health coach. And at this time, I was actually getting promoted in the company, and I was managing the whole wellness department. And I had I managed like 7 to 9 other coaches, all of them down the East Coast, 7 to 9 other offices. And so it made me better as a coach, made me better as a leader, as everything. So I had a why, and I had it associated to helping other people, which was always motivating, because then on those days, and it's not if, it's a when, you're like, fuck it. Like nobody's listening, or this isn't turning into anything. Am I ever going to, what's my ROI? Is it money? How do I get a sponsor? What's the trade-off here kind of thing? Why should I be doing this? Then you remember why. I would think about my patients, maybe like the 3 that month that told me they listened to the podcast and it helped them in something they were working on. Or it gave me a new opportunity to connect with an author that I had been reading and admiring for forever. And once I began to remember that, it always brought me back to the work. And so the why there, and plus the discipline, I think that's just ingrained in me from the military as well.
Every time.
If you commit to something, just do it, and if you're going to quit. Like, just don't, like my man, Ron Swanson says, never half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing. If anybody gets that Parks and Rec reference.
That's great.
So yeah, I mean, that's just it. That was me in the podcast space, but apply that to anything else. And then honestly, the next year and then the next year, and once I really began to pay attention, and this is my next little secret sauce here, is where and how was I being fulfilled? And this is where I think a lot of people get frustrated, and it leads to burnout. Or maybe you're feeling like you're not as successful as you should be. Are you doing what you're doing just to meet some quota? Are you doing what you're doing because that's what you've always done? When's the last time you actually stopped and looked at what you're doing and like assessed, like, I love this. I actually love it. It maybe provides me a living. It provides me some kind of ROI, but the trade-off there also has to have a joy component. It has to have a fulfillment component, or else you're going to hit a wall one day. Again, not a if, but a when. And I realized that the podcast and the human to human connection and just this constant learning and then sharing that learning with others was what was lighting me up the most. And so then I made a pivot in like spring of 2019, actually. And I kind of hung up my hat as health coach, Chase.
Yeah, was it? I think it was December 1st. You mailed it in. You said, was it? Oh no, that was. Oh, I'm so sorry. That was when you left the career, right?
So December 1st, yeah, that's when I gave notice. I was like, hey, I'm leaving the company. I'm going to double down on the podcast. I'm going to launch my own health coaching business online, Everforward Coach, and that's what I did all of 2018. I doubled down my episodes. I went to 2 a week. I figured out how to monetize. Turns out it's no big secret. You just ask people, hey, here's what I have to offer. Could we do a value exchange? And then they're like, yeah. Or like, hey, let's renegotiate. It's really not that daunting, I promise you. You just have to create the right value, the right offer for the right sponsor, for the right trade-off. And so I did that all of 2018, monetized the show, did double episodes a week, grew Everforward Coach. But then in like spring of 2019, I went to a fitness and nutrition coaching seminar with a then friend, mentor, and business coach. Shout out Jason Phillips. And I hired him to help me through this next level of my business. He made this new offer at this seminar, and I was like, I'm hooked. I'm in. Like, you crush it. You always help me and so many other people. And on the first phone call, he basically, like, I paid him to talk me out of scaling my business, my coaching business. He's like, Chase, not once have you really talked about what you want to do with the coaching. Not once have you talked about any of these other things that you hired me to do. You just keep talking about what you're doing on the podcast. You talk about blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what if you just did that more? Wow. I mean, he said something more than that. And then it was just,
it was like fireworks are going off.
It was this next catalyst. It was this next catalyst. And so like the other one was for me in the Army of like, here's what I thought I was going to do just because it's what I've always done. Well, that's changed. I need to move on to something else. I had this next catalyst, this next epiphany. I had this next great outside expert opinion, because he was able to tell me and mirror back in me what was really giving me the most fulfillment. And that's the whole point I'm trying to make here is I was doing what I was always doing. And that doesn't mean that's what I have to keep doing. Just because I was like, oh, well, I got an undergrad in exercise science, and I went to grad school for health promotion. I've got all these letters after my name, and everybody knows me as Coach Chase, Health Coach Chase. It's what I did for years for this other company. We have the ability any day we want to choose what we want to do with our life and how we want to fill our time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I understand we're all in different positions where that literally could quite literally be today you're going to change your life and go in a different direction. Or maybe today is just the idea you build is the day that you build a plan for that new you. Mm-hmm. And that was the day for me, man. And then I just realized I'm going to lean into fulfillment. So I've got the consistency thing down. I've got the why down. I'm serving my audience still. Now I'm just not going to be serving any clients. And then I just went all in. And from there, I went into 3 episodes a week. Wow. And, began to grow it more into a show. I began to film video and stuff as I got settled more here in LA. And I just keep chasing, the consistency is there. That for me is just kind of second nature now. It's just discipline. It's what I do. Yeah. But then it's always just kind of having these benchmarks, these checking ins with myself of what do I do? What do I like to do? What value does it provide me, joy and fulfillment? And as long as I'm staying true to that, then like I know that I'm on the right course.
Yeah, that's such a hard truth to accept, or hard truth to be real with yourself of like, am I doing something to just check the box, or am I doing something because I actually want to do it? And the one thing that I've reminded myself of to this day, and I've even posed the question to other people when talking to people about if they're like not sure if they're on the right path or if they're heading in the right direction, is ask yourself, if money was never an issue for the rest of your life, would you still be doing what you're doing today? And I think that answer in of itself is the immediate, you're headed down the right path, versus you should probably start thinking about what's that next step look like. Because if money is no longer an issue and you no longer want to do X thing, is it really the thing that you should be doing in the first place? Because at some point you're going to hit a roadblock, like you were saying before, it burnt out, or you're just a realization where you're like, I just wasted the last 5 to 10 years doing this and I'm not even passionate about it.
Yeah. And here's the mindset shift that you have to have, because this is what I kind of butted up against. And I think a lot of people butt up against, like you were just saying, oh, well, but I went to school for this, or I've always done this. It would be a waste. All my money to school would be a waste. All these certifications, all this time, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you just flip that on its head and think or even say out loud, everything I did was to get me closer to what I'm supposed to do. Everything I did, every class that I went to, every degree that I got, every certification, every conference, every book, every networking event was not to just check that box off, but was to get me to where I am here now today, to make the decision that I am in control and that I'm going to create my own fucking box. Yeah. And that's exactly what I realized. And that's the mindset that I've chosen to kind of just keep for so long, because I've done things in getting out of the military and choosing a degree and trying to, figure out what I want to do in my next career path. And then I get into it and then I'm like, I don't like this at all, or this is not at all what I thought it was going to be. And then the initial response, like most of us can relate to, is, am I on the right path? Everything we're just talking about, blah, 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 blah. And then you have to say out loud and think, no, it helped me realize that I can now filter down. I can take everything that served me in this experience and just apply it to what I want to do next, and just leave everything that doesn't serve me and leave everything that doesn't give me fulfillment. And so if you look at it that way, well, then quite literally everything you've done personally, professionally has gotten you to where you are now today. So you're one step closer to whatever you want to do with your life. Yeah. And we're so fortunate now. I mean, there may be a certain level of privilege here, but here in America, I mean, we're the land of opportunity. I mean, just honestly, man, anybody, if you're listening, watching, if you got a smartphone, man, you have so much fucking opportunity. If you can just pick this up, man, start an Instagram account, start a Pinterest, start a business, start a Shopify. Like, if you got an iPhone plan and a decent data plan, man, like, the world is your oyster, and just decide what you want to do and how you want to fill your time.
I know, me and my roommate were talking about this the other day. It's like the amount of knowledge that we have access to is unbelievable versus my parents' generation, where it's like they didn't know. I don't even know what % of knowledge they had at my age when they were my age, because you'd have to go to a library to look up information and spend 30 minutes to figure out what's whatever the information is. I just literally Google, or sometimes I go, Siri, what is blank? Boom, answer. It's like I can ask 10 questions, get the answer within a minute. And they would have had to spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours flipping through pages of a book just to get the answer, if the answer was even there.
Exactly. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, there's so much there to our advantage now. And it's just, you have to choose to want to seek it out. You have to choose to want to find it. You have to choose to spend your time a little bit differently now, so that you can spend time however you want later. Yeah.
The thing that is so important, and I very much remind myself daily how grateful I should feel, because it wasn't long ago, it was a couple years ago when I was unsure, is I know what my true north is. And it's so clear to me that you know your true north, and having that true north is in of itself such a massive win, because it gives you a purpose in your why, and it gets you up every morning. And some days, we have our hit or misses. We don't feel so great. But most times when you have that why so defined that it gets you off your ass and going, what is the best step to finding a why if you don't know what it is, do you think?
Yeah, really good question. And how I'll answer it is, some people know. I think some people do know. It's like a little hint, a little gut feeling. So if that's you, I would encourage you to lean into that, explore that more, brain dump that more, like my experience earlier. But a lot of us, we don't realize the gifts that we already give to other people. And I honestly think it's just as simple as polling other people, or finally just paying attention. Like I say, paying attention to the gifts that others already receive from you. Case in point. Let me get here professional. My voice. I've been told quite literally since I was a teenager, ever since my testicles descended and lovely puberty hit, Chase, wow, you've got a great voice. You should do radio. Like, and this sounds kind of vain to say it out loud now, but there's a point here.
Yeah.
This is just who I am. I didn't choose. I didn't get a vocal box inserted. I didn't, strike a deal with God to have a certain decibel. It's just who I am. And so it doesn't stand out. It's not anything extraordinary to me. It's my ordinary. But to other people who hear me, and for whatever reason they like to listen to me, it connects with them on an energetic level, on an education level, on an entertainment level. I've heard it my whole life. I dismissed it. But then one day, right in the middle of all of this self-exploratory, personal development, self-help, life crisis, everything we just talked about, I'm pretty sure it was a patient of mine, tell me, you should do radio. And that I've heard that my entire life. Hell, my uncle has been in radio his entire life. He used to work for Sirius XM and try to get me to do, mixtapes and shit all the time. It didn't
Wow.
interest me at all.
Wow.
But because I was showing up, of all the things we've been talking about, I was consistently showing up to myself day in, day out. I was becoming more clear in my why of service to other people and getting better in my own personal, mental, physical, emotional self. That clicked with me differently on that day. And this light bulb went off of, oh, what about a podcast? I have no interest in being on radio. I didn't go to school for radio. Why would I do radio? But all these shows I'm listening to are with health coaches and entrepreneurs and health and wellness experts. They're already helping me get better at my job. So what if I did that instead? You never know what gifts others already receive from you. So just pay attention, because I promise you, it's that compliment. It's that comment. Are you the guy that all your other guy friends come to for dating advice? Are you the girl that every girl comes to you for, I don't know, eyebrow threading or whatever? Like, what does someone come to you for? What do they come to you for repeatedly? That is your extraordinary. That is a skill and a talent that you have that they don't, that you can lean into. And so that's what I did, man. And so that's what I would recommend. Pay attention to the gifts that others already receive from you. And if you don't know what the hell that is, just ask. Like I said, smartphone, pick it up, make a poll on your Instagram story. Ask your mom, ask your friends, like, hey, what advice do you come to me for? Hey, what do you think I'm best at? What am I good at? And just ask around. It doesn't stand out to us because it's just who we are and it's our norm day in, day out. But to other people, like, that shines, man.
Yeah, that's so well put. I think the self-awareness aspect of just, look, like, what are people coming to you asking you advice on, or what are the things that you simply enjoy doing by yourself when nobody's watching? Because
And
those
that's
are the
huge
true
right there too. What do you already enjoy doing?
Yes, those are the true indicators of what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And how do you mash those together? And then that in of itself is going to give you a direction of what you probably should be doing. Because if you can enjoy doing it every single day and people value it and you're good at it, that's the best way to find a way to make a living doing something,
Yeah, and that's, what do they say? If you can find a way to love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still work to be done, but
Totally.
I think about when I show up to my work now, I show up in my office in my home, and those days hit me where I'm just like, I'm tired, or I'm not feeling it, or just whatever. I'm a human being. It's so different than when I used to have those days back when I was working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Because, this is another little like aha moment. This is how I knew it was time for me to leave that company, amongst a lot of other things. I showed up to work one day and I parked in the parking lot and I just sat there and I didn't get out of my car. I didn't want to get out. I just stared at the building and I was like, fuck. I know as soon as I go in there, I'm going to have to deal with this and that and blah, 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 and all this drama and all these things. And I even looked up on my phone. I pulled up my patient list for the day and I was like, I love him. I love her. We've been having great success. Like, I know this check-in is going to be great. We've been working on so many great things. Like, but I had resistance and hesitance and regret about what I was doing anymore. Now, fast forward to where I am now today, because I leaned into all the things that I was just sharing, like, that stuff can still rise up to the top, but it's totally different. Like, I know that once I get going, it's my baby and I'm able to serve people in a way that I never could before. And so those days still happen, but just how you execute them becomes entirely different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so tough in those moments where we feel like we need change and we don't know what that step is. When you're sitting in the parking lot and you have this vision of like, what, like, this isn't meant to be, or I similarly just like see myself being a full-time podcaster and I have not been able to crack that code. And it's just like, I try not to allow it to get to me, because I know that that's when you start to feel resistance. And then it's like a spiral effect of like your mind starts going downward because you're like, I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I try to just trust to some extent the flow of life that, as long as I'm putting my best foot forward, things will happen when they're supposed to. But then there's also the other side of like, are you being aggressive enough? Are you, trying the things that you should be trying? So I think it's when you recognize that there's a time for change, you have to also be very mindful of how much you let that get to you, because if you let it get to you too much, you're building up too much resistance to actually take that step forward to make the initial change.
Yeah, and what you just said reminded me of I think another little thing that's worked well for me the last couple of years. So in my story, I've been sharing a lot of professions, seasons of life, a lot of identities. And when we're in an identity and that changes, it's above and beyond just what actually happened. It's above and beyond you had this job, now you have this job. It's above and beyond, you're this age and then that age. You're with this person, that person. When you are wrapped up in an identity, it is exponentially more difficult to leave behind. So for me, when I realized that, okay, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a podcaster, I'm a whatever, the less I focused on that identity, that outside term, and I began to do more of I am Chase, I am me. I leaned into, on top of everything we've been talking about, but I leaned in on who am I here today? What do I want to accomplish? How do I want my day to look? What do I want tomorrow to look like? What does Chase want? I keep going back to fulfillment and all of this. If I can live and act and create out of pure fulfillment, no identity, then I never really have to worry about checking a box of, am I a successful podcaster? Am I a successful YouTuber? Am I a successful Instagrammer? Am I this? Because then it's no longer me comparing myself to this other definition or version of that I'm, air quote here, supposed to be, or how my content is supposed to look, or what my business is supposed to look like. But instead, I just chose me. And I mean, it's difficult to kind of really wrap this whole concept up here. I mean, because it's a very intricate and personal process. I mean, of course, you got to make a living, you got to pay rent, you got to pay bills, you got to do all these things on top of like finding fulfillment. It's like, fuck you, Chase. Like, how do you do all this? But here's what I can promise you. If you lean in on fulfillment daily, you will wake up one day and realize that it is just filtered down and compounded, and you are building and living a life that you love. And if you can detach a little bit more every day from the identity associated to your job, to what you're supposed to be doing or what you are actually doing, and leaning more into your own identity, you're creating the strongest foundation and the strongest idea of self-worth and what you consider yourself to be, and creating your own label. There's no more comparison anymore, basically. And that's been powerful for me. So the more I lean into on what is the best version of me, and what is the best type of content I can create, what is the best podcast I can create, what is the best whatever, then it is just me against me, and it's no longer me against anybody else.
You're just focusing on what can you control this day? What can you do today that's going to
absolutely
put you in a better position, instead of thinking about the big picture of how am I going to be in a different position 6 months, a year from now, and just instead, what are the little 2 to 3 decisions today, things that I can do that are going to make me a better version of myself for tomorrow, in any magnitude of that matter.
Absolutely, man.
I think that's the best way to do it, is break it down into those micro. I think there was actually a quote whenever I didn't get a chance to call it out, but it was like, you had even talked about when it comes to goal setting, that there is a way to do whatever it is you want to do in this world. It just takes discipline over motivation. It takes goal setting at the smallest scale, and that the smallest scale aspect, whether it's goal setting or making change in your life, fitness goal, goal setting, I guess, just in general, the small scale. What are those little bit of things that you can do every single day that are going to make that change? And I think that just changes the entire perspective, and it makes it less overwhelming of like, it's not a massive leap. It's just the baby steps. So seeing you today, somebody listens in that doesn't know who Chase is, and this is the first time hearing it, they're like, he's a full-time podcaster. He's got a production company. He's living in West Hollywood.
What an asshole, this guy.
Yeah, he's sitting back from his freaking armchair giving advice. But little do we know, there's been a bunch of mini steps along the way.
So many, man. It's, it's so true what they say, the cliche. It's, what is it? It takes 5 years to be an overnight sensation.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe it to be true. Like you just said, man, if you just focus on one thing a day, that tiny little habit, one thing you can do right here, right now, today, and just do that repeatedly, I promise you, you will wake up one day and you will realize you're living the good life, man, because it's the one you built.
Yeah. I completely agree. What's been I listened to all these episodes because I loved hearing the journey of both of you as you evolved. But somebody that was an early guest on your podcast was Nick Bear, and he's been a
Yeah.
huge inspiration in my running career since COVID started. I think YouTube was picking up that I was like Google YouTubing like how to run, how to become a better runner, and then all of a sudden I see this guy Nick Bear pop up on my screen. I'm like, who is this guy? What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned from him? And the reason I was making the call of the episodes, I love that you guys have had like these. It feels like it was like every 12 to 16 month check-ins, even ever since you had even started your podcast. What's been one of the biggest lessons or takeaways that you've had from your relationship with Nick?
Oh, wow. Really good question. Unique question. I've known Nick for years now. I was a groomsman in his wedding last year, actually.
Amazing. Kravitz was there too, right?
Yeah. Zach was there too. Yeah. We've all kind of known each other for a long time. It was
lineup.
The boys were back in town in a big way, man. What's the biggest thing I learned from Nick? I mean, I'll kind of just piggyback off what we were just talking about. I think Nick he's a crazy example of just show up and do the work. I think honestly, other than my brother, and I say that because I'm his brother, but also like I literally day in, day out for years have seen that kid just work and grind and just put his nose to the grindstone and bleed blood, sweat, and tears for what he wanted to create out of this life. And I think Nick is very much the same. I think Nick is probably the second hardest working guy I've ever seen besides my brother.
Wow.
And it's just, in the years that I've known him, outside looking in, and from what he has shared with me so many times of when a lot of people would have thrown in the towel, when like just at this point you're not successful, it's not going to work, it's not going to stick. I'm specifically talking about Bear Performance Nutrition, BPN, a supplements company, and a lot of other endeavors actually, even some joint endeavors that him and I were going through that never saw the light of day. He just kept showing up, man. He just kept showing up. And I think that is a characteristic of us Army folk as well, military in general, is just showing up at the right time, at the right place, in the right uniform is like 90% of the battle. And if you can just get there, if you can just show up to your podcast, if you can show up to your blog, if you can show up to your job, if you can just show up in the mirror for yourself every fucking day, you're there. You're there.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's for him, it's just keep showing up. I mean, I'll use his own catchphrase here. Go one more. I guess that's two. Show up and then go one more. But it's just, I mean, just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. And again, all good. I mean, Nick, for sure, anybody watches his stuff, he has a why, he has a vision. He does things for his own fulfillment and for a greater cause. And I love the guy. It's been a great friendship for years now. And it's just, it's wild. If you just choose to keep showing up, what is possible.
Yeah, well, credit to you because you're cut from the same cloth as him. It's very obvious to me.
Thanks, man.
Through this conversation, through the research that I was doing, that you very much have similar mindsets and traits, and it exactly speaks to the reason why you were a groomsman at his wedding.
I don't do cardio like Nick anymore. Ever since he started running, I can't be associated with that cardio life. I don't know.
Oh my God. We'll get you out there running some miles. We'll get you out there.
I used to, man. I hated running, but the Army made me good at it. That's for damn sure. But yeah.
Story of every person that I know that's went to the Army. Oh, that's great. We're going to get into the final 5 questions and then we'll kind of wrap up. These questions, just 1-sentence answer, and we'll kind of get through them real quick. First question: what self-care activities help you be your best self?
Morning routine. Morning routine, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna steal a second answer there. It's like really morning and evening. It's that bookend habit, the bookend habits of the day. Over the years, the number one thing I prioritize that really makes me the best I can be is sleep. And in order for my sleep to be optimized, it's evening routine, morning routine, which I guess you could even boil down to just carving out time daily to take care of myself. To have that time to myself, to be still with myself and just do things I know they're going to honor the day and what I need to get done, but also honor my body quite literally. So that for me has been crucial and is a non-negotiable.
I think we've all heard many times different morning routines, but can you just hit real quick what your evening routines look like? Because I think that's a interesting one that you don't hear a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, yeah. So my evening routines. So it typically starts right around sundown.
Hmm.
The time kind of changes a little bit, but oh shit. Let me backtrack even a little bit more. So evening routine really starts for me, I would say between 12 and 2 p.m. because that for me is my
Wow.
caffeine cutoff. So I'll
Wow.
stop consuming caffeine. For most people, your half life of caffeine is about 6 hours. So that meaning the last time you have a cup of coffee, energy drink, whatever, typically 6 hours later, about half of that dose is still in your body. So I guess my evening routine really starts between 12 and 2 p.m.
Wow.
So I cut off the caffeine there. And then right around sundown, I will put on some blue light blockers to kind of help my body lower cortisol, allow melatonin to naturally rise, reduce eye strain and whatnot. I will then go on an evening walk most nights, not every night, but most nights. And then it's really it's a lot of the things that people have probably heard. It's making the house as dark as possible, making it as cool as possible,
Mm.
choosing to put the laptop away. I can measure this as well with like wearables and stuff that I use on nights that I hashtag grind until 10 p.m. or 10:30 versus like 8. It plays a significant role in my body's ability to get to sleep and to stay asleep and my recovery rates the next day. So it's cutting the caffeine, blue light blockers, walk, bring down the lights, increase the temperature, and just allow as many external stimuli to be reduced as possible.
Decrease the temperature. No.
Yeah, decrease the temperature.
Oh, you said
Excuse me.
increase it.
Yeah, yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
I hope you're not cooking up to a sauna and going to
No, no,
sleep.
no, no, no. That's for another day. The sauna's for another day. Yeah. And then I actually have a timer on my phone. I use the Chili Sleep. It's this mattress pad cover.
Yep.
So around 9:30, 9:45, it automatically begins to cool down my bed to 63 degrees. So that way, by the time I get into bed at 10 p.m., like, I am chilling, man. I'm chilling.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's really good. That's really good. If you could go back and tell yourself one piece of advice at any point of your life, what would it be and when?
It would have been right after my father passed away, and it would be, Chase, it's okay to feel.
Mm.
Because I didn't feel like I had permission. I didn't feel like I was allowed to feel. And I always try to give myself a little bit of grace because, like I said, where I was at that time,
You're young, man.
I was young. I was serving my country in a time of war, and quite literally, that could have been a major distraction that could have caused a lot of problems and quite literally could have caused deaths. Distraction during wartime, distraction in the military could equal your life or the loss of somebody else. And so I would have given myself permission to feel and to not just suppress everything at that time, and really to know that it's okay and that you should feel these things because they're going to come back to bite you in the ass later, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. What's an area of your life you need to put more effort into?
Ooh. Honestly, I would love to put more effort into my family, meaning my sister, my brother, my mom, my stepmom, like my immediate family. And it's because my wife's Persian. She's Iranian American, Middle Eastern, like they're tight. Like they're all up each other's ass sometimes in a really annoying way. But it's out of love all the time. And they're daily, I just see an example of just family that is there, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah.
And not to say that mine isn't, but I like that more. I like being more present. And again, this is me personally. My brother and my sister, they're probably like, Chase, we're fine, leave us alone. But I would like to make more effort with my family, and that's just little things, texting more often, calling more often, coordinating in real life as much as possible. It's meaningful to me.
Well, I'm going to challenge you after this podcast. Shoot one of them a text after we wrap up. Before
I'll do it, man.
Before you talk to your wife or anything. That's the challenge. What's the first step anyone can take to reaching their inner potential?
What is the first step anyone can take to reaching their inner potential? Know that you can. I think in the pursuit of our inner potential, in pursuit of potential, in the pursuit of growth, in the pursuit of more out of life, that usually initially is coupled with, can I? How can I? How is this possible? Am I worthy of it? And if you can start knowing that you are worthy, start knowing that potential is possible and capable, and we all deserve it, and we all already have it. It's just a matter of how are you going to show up for yourself long enough to know that it's already there, and to look inward and to realize that. Just know that you are worth it and know that it's already there. I promise you. And it's just a matter of time if you keep showing up for yourself, and you're going to realize it.
It's good. It's powerful. Last question for you. If somebody's made it through the last 66 minutes of this podcast, what's one challenge you have for them after they wrap up listening to this podcast?
One challenge. Oh, damn. I'll go back to the gifts that others already received from you. I would challenge them to really consciously sit for a minute or two and just think about, what do people come to me for? Am I that guy, that girl for what piece of advice or whatever? Think on it, and or quite literally just ask. I don't care if you have 5 followers or 5 million. Just go on your story right now, if you use Instagram, I guess, and just post up. What do you think when you think of me? How do you think of me? Is it, put up a poll. Am I the advice person? Am I the fitness person? Am I the writer? Am I the copywriter? Am I the audio editor, the video editor? Just poll your audience and just see. Do a little quick litmus test of your potential.
That's good. That's really important. Chase, this has been an honor. This conversation has
my dude, this is great. Thank you.
So beautifully. And just doing the research for this podcast, it got me super excited because, like I said in the beginning, you're a great example of somebody that has just continuously recreated their identity to a certain extent. I agree, always going back to I am Chase. But I think along the way, whether it was through the Army, whether it was then working like in the health space of like a 9-to-5, then to take the leap and create your own lane and start a podcast, and then start a podcast production company. And it's just so obvious to me that you have so much belief in yourself, which is like in of itself the key ingredient, no matter what it is that you want to do. And just through past podcasts that I had heard you interviewed on, or you interviewing, like, your mindset is really sharp, and it's a product of everything that you've dealt with getting you to this place. And honestly, it's an honor on behalf of your father, of like this ever forward, that now that those 2 words have never been so more like, now feel a part of me. And it's really because of you. So there's a lot of mantras and philosophies that I live by and serve as constant reminders. But I can tell you that if there's one that's getting added to the playbook of the bearded man, it is ever forward. And I think you're resembling it, and you're putting that energy to the world. And it's been an absolute pleasure and honor chatting with you today, man.
Bobby, I receive all that, man. Thank you so much. Seriously. And yeah, it's always wild for me. I call it being on the other side of the microphone. Yeah. And just to acknowledge you and the work that you're doing, man, because whether I'm interviewing somebody, but especially now when I'm on the other side of the microphone, it's a really cool reminder of just what life has thrown at me and how I have navigated those obstacles, and just where I am here today. It's wild, man. Just the fact that we're all here alive, breathing, kicking, screaming is fucking crazy. But just to hear all this mirrored back, it's affirmation, and it's a reminder that I'm on the path that I want to be on, and my intention is being received, man. So seriously, it means a lot.
You're on the right path, man. Just keep the pedal to the metal. Keep to the pedal to the metal. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this podcast today, I have a favor to ask. Please, please, please screenshot this episode on whatever podcast platform you are listening in on. Post it to your IG story. Tag Chase. He is at Chase, ChaseChewning. I'll have that linked up in the description below. Also tag me at Bobbbaaaay. That's B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. Share the podcast on your IG story. Let us know, what was the biggest takeaway? What was the learning? What was the gem? How did this podcast episode specifically change your mindset, your perception? Super curious to kind of hear your guys and gals' feedback. So please share that out. Also below, I will have Everforward Radio podcast linked up. You can also find Chase at chasechewning.com. I will have that linked up below, as well as his Operation Podcast. I didn't write the website. I'll have that linked up below. Yeah. Anything else last to plug in before we kind of wrap up?
No, man, just sending people love lately. I've been seeing a lot of people steer away from, I think, acting out of love, just where we are in the world right now. So I hope we all can get back to center a little bit more, to get back to love, and whether that's love for yourself or love for a neighbor, hopefully both.
Amen to that. Chase Chewning, thanks for coming on the podcast today, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Bearded Man Podcast. See ya. Incredible.